Live, and we are now live. I hope, anyways. All right, good evening, everybody. We're back in the Weather Center. This is our next live tropical update. We've got a lot to discuss tonight. Going to try to consolidate it, to tell you the truth, because the weather's bad, and I know that this could cause some hiccups in the connectivity here. So we're going to try to consolidate as much as we can, but we're going to have a fruitful conversation in doing so. So thank you very much for taking some time out of your Friday night, Friday evening to sit here with me in the Weather Center to talk tropics. Let's go ahead and get started. We'll start off by saying hello first. We have a lively chat tonight. Matthew F150, good to see you, my brother. Alexander Jones, Ethan's Life, good to see you. DNL over from YouTube, from Instagram. We're on YouTube. Hello. David Schlotthauer is in the chat tonight. We've got a lot of folks tuning in. Lena V, it's good to see you. Good evening, everybody. All right. Robbie Lynn McCrary, good to see everybody. So let's go ahead and get started. We're going to transition right over to the National Hurricane Center homepage. We've got our feature. I was hoping that no later than Friday night would they finally tag this puppy, and I'm glad that they finally did it. We have the token 0-4-20 split out there. Wherever my mouse went, there it is. Formation chances 0% in the next 2 days, albeit this does show promising signs on the models. I think some of them are a little overzealous, especially the last couple of GFS runs, really getting that northeastern lobe of vorticity associated with our tropical wave to get going a little too soon. That's just me. I know the wave looks healthy on satellite appearance, but I don't quite think we're going to see cyclogenesis in the next day or so, like some of our models are alluding to. Formation chances for now are at about a 20% shot, and if you notice, the forward progress is going to be moving at a fairly steady click, 15 to 20 miles an hour off, generally towards the west-northwest. So that'll also kind of slow it down a little bit. We want tropical features to travel approximately 8 to about 12, maybe 15 miles an hour max. When they're booking it towards the west at 15 to 20 miles an hour, it somewhat impedes that vertical structure. It creates a little bit of tilt, but I really don't think that's going to be an issue, honestly. Don't really think that's going to be an issue for this one. Models have been very confident with the way they've latched onto it, and to give them a little bit more credit, we also have far more consistency than we've had the entire hurricane season. We've gotten far more consistency than the entire hurricane season. I think now that our MJO is finally beginning to move into phases 1 and 2, especially over Africa, the easternmost or westernmost portions of the Indian Ocean, the Middle East, we're starting to see more moisture, more lift focusing out there. And that's why, if you were to take a look at the cyclonic weather or any satellite image of Africa, you'll notice a big change in the environment. Night and day difference. We have a bit of a Saharan air layer plume out there currently. That's what's trying to suffocate 96L, albeit it's managed to sustain a little bit of thunderstorms near the wave, the low pressure axes, but it's not doing too much. That is going to be kicker number 1, to tell you the truth. The forecast is kind of locked in. I'm going to be bold enough to say that, and it might throw some folks off. The forecast is just about locked in, but it's not locked in, and I'll explain. So I said this earlier at News 6 this afternoon. Think of it like you're on a 2-lane road. You know precisely where your point B is once you've left point A. The problem is you're going to run into some really thick patches of fog, and that might make things a little treacherous as you continue down your route. That's kind of the issue we're facing here. There's a couple of little nuances in the pattern that may cause this thing to curve hard right and make it to Bermuda and then start lifting towards the north, or this is going to continue to become a Greater Antilles, Bahamas, and eventually East Coast United States issue. If I had to give you a somewhat confident analysis right now, I would argue that this is definitely not going to be a fish storm. The definition of a fish storm is a feature that curves and never crosses 60 west. This is definitely going to make it across 60 west. I'm very confident in that. Where I think we could see the huge margin of error, which is what our ensembles are currently struggling with, is just to the west of Bermuda and then around the eastern seaboard. That would be my margin of error right there. Let me draw it with their formation cone, kind of sort of like this. That would be my major margin of error. Now, obviously, we can curve back towards the right hard, but that's if we actually get a trough to come through and pick it up. And that's going to be another kicker here. We have to watch what happens over the Rockies over the next 4 to 7 days. Oh boy, can someone in the chat let me know if the stream is okay? Because I'm already getting an error for some reason. We just got started. I know there's a lot of lightning and thunder in the area, but are you guys still hearing me okay? Let me know, please, in the chat if you're picking me up right now. I don't want us to lag out. I want to try to talk as much as we can and get as much stuff out into open air as possible. So there you have it. We also still have 96L. We're still continuing to see formation chances dropping down. 0% over the next 2 days, now down to 40%. We may even go back to code yellow with the 2 a.m. update coming up later tomorrow morning, and then we'll have to see what 8 a.m. has for us. I would not be surprised if we start to nudge our new area of influence or interest up a couple notches over the next couple of days. So let's go ahead. We're going to move over to water vapor. Normally I have the full disk infrared shot for you, but today we're going to talk water vapor because I want to show you some of the bits and pieces of the pattern out there. First and foremost, for us in the United States and portions of the Western Northern Caribbean, we're under a very active pattern. Most definitely. We have what looks to be a little bit of a subtropical ridge, a little bit of an anticyclone beginning to build up over the deep south and the southeast United States, ramping up our rain chances. We have a ton of moisture, ton of thunderstorms out here rocking. It's rocking outside of my house right now. And we also have what's left of an early tropical wave that models were kind of grabbing hold of. And I really should say it was the AI model. It was the AI model. So let's not get carried away and say all of our models are being dorky. No, it was kind of the AI model that had some big flops with our first couple of systems. Let's be real here, okay? When the Euro saw it, it kind of got a little, warm and fuzzy for it, and then it dropped it. The GFS never really caught on with the first wave, if I remember correctly. It took its sweet time. The second wave, we had a couple runs, but even then there was an enormous discontinuity. So it's not like we've had really good consistency. The Icon and the Canadian model, forget it. It was like pulling teeth to get those things to respond to the environment. Then we have what's left of Dexter, well to the northernmost Atlantic there. You can see that is a deep occluded feature now. You've got that jet finger working its way around that mature system. I should say it's like a barotropic cold core system at this point, with a lot of the cool, drier air from up north in the mid-latitudes and the lower poles wrapping into it. And then we have 96L there. You can see it's found a little pocket of moisture. We've got some thunderstorms with it. Okay. We've got a little bit of thunderstorms with it. It's got some rotation, that counterclockwise flow. Not a whole lot with it. And as it continues to pull to the north, it's going to interact with this upper low here. And that's kind of what dorked it up. That was another forecast that really would have had it moving off towards the west until the tut broke down and we saw a little bit of an extension of that extremely positively tilted trough break off. You have one piece of it there, and then you have another piece of it here. And that's what threw a monkey in the wrench. That's what threw a monkey in the wrench for 96L. But then you look across Africa and out across the MDR, and we're really ramping up our general relative humidity and moisture down there. Doing a fantastic job of doing that. This is the mid-level water vapor. You switch to your upper-level water vapor and forget it. There's really not a whole lot of dry air. In fact, the upper levels between 500 and 300 millibars are very much so saturated. You switch back to your mid-level water vapor down to about the 850, 700 millibar level all the way up to 400. We're still doing pretty good. So we're starting to see a general increase in our moisture, our lift, our atmosphere is starting to get a little more active. I should have, don't know if I have it on here. I know I've pulled it up before, the precipitable water satellite. I really want to show you that. I'm not going to go derailing the live stream real quick. We'll go ahead and keep it as is. But anyways, you guys are getting the general picture there. Now we're going to get into, let's see here. I have the FSU Experimental Genesis product up. And what we want to look at is going to be at the bottom of the page here. This is going to be for our new area of interest. You can see the further we go in time, the greater likelihood we have cyclogenesis. The first block is going to be in the next 2 days. The GFS is pretty much on an island with this one, 18%. That's probably where we got the 20% from. You go out to 120 hours, which is approximately 5 days, give or take from now. You go up to 40%. We have more models latching onto it. You go out to about, I want to say that's 8 or 9 days. Someone correct me if I'm wrong. I know 144 hours is usually a week. So that would probably be about 8 or 9 days there, and we go up to, if you round up, 50% chance of development over the next 8 days, which I think is a little undersold, to tell you the truth. A little undersold. And then on top of that, what else did I have pulled up here? There was something else I wanted to show you all before we start getting into the models. This is what I want to show you. And then this here, right out of the gate, this is going to be the other piece of the puzzle here, and I apologize, I'm sweating right now. The AC is out in the house. It's been a very brutal last couple of days. The AC has gone out in the house, and it's rough. This is going to be the other pivotal piece in the puzzle, is going to be your Pacific North American Oscillation. All of our models, as we get closer to the 13th, about 5 days from now, we're already starting to see subtle signs of that. We're going to have more subtropical ridging envelope much of the south and eastern United States. It's a pattern that we've been dealing with since about late May. That subtropical ridge is going to build back in, and then some of our long-range computer models are thinking there could be a bit of a trough that works its way through the fairly zonal flow. You switch over to your North Atlantic Oscillation, and I'm noticing that as we go further through time, there are subtle indications we're trying to trend into a negative phase, but where it matters most for all of us out there in terms of if and when this wave develops, we're going to be neutral. And the key takeaway here is we're going to have predominantly zonal flow. So let me take you back to, a nice, we'll get you in front of a graphic that shows much of North America and portions of the Atlantic. So let's see if I can get this to load. It looks like we're already slowing down, which is not a good sign. Let's go, computer. Don't you poop out on me. There we go. Okay. So we're going to pull up our height anomalies. And right out of the gate, if you notice, we have primarily zonal flow here. We have a bit of an upper low, nice little trough working its way through the pattern. That's the most amplified portion of the mid-latitude setup, though. Most of our flow is mainly west to east there. It's not very ramped up. It's not meridional. Meridional meaning more north-south, zonal meaning east-west, or west to east, however you want to favor it. As you go through time, once you go about midway the run, I think this is 18Z, so we're not going to get very far. I might have to switch back to 12 Zulu because everything 18Z just loaded, and I don't know where the model run went. That's not a good sign. I really hope this live stream doesn't lag out. I'm not liking the trends here. The trends are not your friends in this case. There we go. All right, is this 12Z? Gosh, this is why I backed off from live streams, guys. I don't know what's happening with this computer, and to think that my internet provider charges more now for what seems like a lesser signal. You go halfway through the run, we'll stop it right there before YouTube decides to crap out on us. There you go. There is your negative PNA, your textbook negative PNA. Big old ridge extending up over the eastern United States, and then a nice long wave trough out over the west. The trough out over the west, a few of us in a couple tropical chats I'm a part of, I believe we have some folks in here as well from that tropics chat. So good evening if you are there. I do sincerely appreciate y'all tuning in. It's awesome to have you with us talking tropics. There's been a couple of different end solutions that we've seen out west with that upper long wave trough. Some of them want to keep it so progressive that we get a bubble of cold air that breaks off over the four corners in the desert southwest, which was typically a severe weather player when I was out there forecasting for the southwest and the central and western CONUS areas. On other, you know what, in fact, I'll show you the GFS. I'll show you the major difference in the different GFS runs that we've gotten. Some showing recurving, some showing mid-Atlantic, others showing South Florida, and so on and so forth. Geez, this is not cooperating. This is not cool. Bear with me. I might have to try another website. We are lagging up real bad right now. Let's see if the tidbits are going to work for us. Yeah, it's definitely not a good sign when you're, there we go, when your model data won't even load. So let's go to the North America chart here, and we'll pull up our height anomalies, because these are going to be the two, if not three different things that we're watching that will really help us to generate a good long-range forecast. The trends are really going to be your friend here. We have to watch the trends. I don't trust ensembles right now, and I definitely do not trust the deterministic runs. There's way too much windshield wiping, and because we have so much time ahead of us, we're not going to get a clear picture until this thing probably crosses 60 west. We'll finally get a bit more of that upper air data into our models to get a better handle on what's happening south of Alaska, the North Pacific, coming in the west coast of the North America, and then moving towards the Atlantic. It seems we're generally going to favor more neutral flow, mid-latitude west to east, tropical east to west. And that's why the general thinking is during the first 3 to 5 days, this wave is going across the Atlantic. It's going to move west. This not going to be a quick escaper. That is for certain. So let's go back to 6Z, for example. This is when we saw our big break in continuity, and there's been a lot of those. So as you go through time, let's fast forward. Hopefully this catches up. Let's see. This is going to be valid for... Dear Heavenly Father, there we go. Valid for August 16th, so this is the following Saturday. Not tomorrow, but following Saturday, a week from now. Notice we have set the stage. Let me get my face out of the way so you all can see a little bit better. Let's see. There we go. We're not going to have my little face in the way for now so you all can see the chart fully. There is our system continuing to move towards the west. And again, if you notice, this is kind of cockeyed. Think of it like we're looking at the globe. We're looking straight down at the United States, but we're looking at a globe. Look at your Latin long line. See how they circle around? So it's important that you recognize we are looking at this on a global scale, on a globe as if it were three-dimensional. It's not a flat, rolled-out topographical map. And if you notice, our mid-latitude flow is moving to the east. We have westerlies up there. And then across the tropics, if you infer that you're looking at a globe, not a flat map, you have prevailing easterlies out there. Your easterly trade winds are helping to accelerate that west-northwest progress. This is the trough. This is the troublemaker. And an earlier model runner, too, actually amped up 96L. And so it started to pump the long wave pattern as well. Those are some things we really have to watch for. The GFS has a common bias of underestimating the ridge out there, not only just across the Atlantic, but over the United States as well. So we'll have to pay close attention to that. Climatologically speaking, you have stronger surface pressures. You have stronger high height centers out there, subtropical ridging, because we're in the peak of the summertime. So you're naturally going to have stronger subtropical and tropical features because you got a lot more heat, a lot more incoming solar radiation to play around with. So I want you to watch this trough here over the western United States and watch what happens here with what becomes a Category 2 version of 96L. And I'll slowly step you through the clock. So notice what happens over the west. You see what just happened there? Pocket of lower heights broke off over Southern California, Nevada, and the Four Corners, and now we have a progressing trough trying to move into central and eastern Canada. And then look at what's happening over the Atlantic here. We have an amplifying 96L, which would now be a tropical storm, if not a hurricane, per this model run. Again, it's just a model run. This is almost 10 days out. This is going to change. We saw changes even just with the upcoming two model runs, 12 and 18Z. But then watch what happens to our flow as we become a little bit more meridional. See how we find the weakness? We find the weakness and we start to curve towards the north, because our Atlantic subtropical ridging was able to weaken, and we broke off our trough out west, which allowed the pattern to pick up pace. It allowed the pattern to pick up pace, so we weakened the Atlantic high pressure, and we became a lot more zonal. If I switch over to your jet stream at 250 millibars, that's a meridional pattern. We've got a nice trough, good jet max digging in the west coast, and a ridge building out east. There's your negative PNA. I'll go ahead and draw it with a different color ink so we can kind of start fresh. So we're weakening our Atlantic high and we're building the ridge and our meridional flow over the United States. And then notice what happens at the base there. See how we get a little bit of a jet max that breaks off over the front range of the Rockies, and we get another area of anticyclonic flow down there, which is why our East Coast ridge moves out. You see that? There's your anticyclone. There's our system. We've got a weak Atlantic high pressure. We have a trough pushing in, and so it's going to curve to the north. Very viable solution. Is it possible that this happens? Yes, minus 96L. minus this. I'm not sold on that. That's definitely the GFS just being silly after the 10-day mark. We're not going to suddenly get a category 2 borderline major hurricane out of 96L. Now, if you go back and we go back to our upper level ridging or upper level pattern, the anomalies, and we go to 12Z. Watch what happens here. Let's go back to the 16th. So here we are. We're Saturday. We've got our feature. Great consistency during the first 7 days. Excellent consistency. We're looking at it being just to the immediate northeast of the Leeward Island, so we all want to pay attention down there. This is not a Windward Island threat. Mr. Man JJ, if you're in the chat, not a Windward Island threat. I'm not worried about this thing traveling that far to the south. We would need something to go terribly wrong with our steering over the Atlantic. But then, all right, so we have trough digging out west over the Rockies, ridge building in out over the east. There's your negative PNA, but then watch what happens as we go into the following week. Notice that we no longer have 96L out there, so we allow a bit of amplitude to increase off of a trough up over Greenland and Atlantic Canada. So as the ridge builds over the eastern United States, we amplify the troughing extending out over the Atlantic, and we keep our not as progressive long wave feature over the west. So this allows our meridional flow to really build up, increasing the strength of our East Coast ridge. Now look at the massive difference, night and day difference, because we have a stronger Atlantic high pressure, keeping those easterly winds pushing. So instead of being picked up by a weakness and a dominating tropical cyclone on the earlier model run, we don't progress the trough out of the Rockies too quickly, which means our zonal flow does not return on this run, and we keep this thing nudged off to the south. And that's how you end up with this Gulf solution, which I'm not really a fan of either, to tell you the truth. I don't see this going to Texas or Louisiana. I really don't. That's just me. Obviously, stranger things have happened, and we have to kind of keep our eyes open regardless because of the fact we don't have any data critical to a feature actually present. So our models are still trying to put something there when it's not there. And then obviously 18 Zulu, night and day difference. It said no negative PNA, no ridge out east. We're actually going to go into a positive PNA. And yeah, now we have a big trough. Whoops, almost said something. Now we have a big old trough out over the east. So this, throw it in the trash. That does not line up with anything that we've been seeing. Now all of a sudden we've flipped the pattern by the 19th to 20th. If you notice, our ridge disappears by the 19th, into the 18th, into the 19th, and then we're back to a positive PNA. And then all of a sudden the ridge resurfaces. That's not what's going to happen. So that is why I definitely do think this is one that we have to pay close attention to. I'm not going to sit there and try to pinpoint a landfall because we don't even have the feature on the board just yet. We have to wait for it to develop, and then we can take it a step further. But right now, we're drilling down at the different individual pieces. The AI model has a proven track record to handle upper-level features a lot better than some of our deterministic models. And even this model continues to go back and forth. If you switch to 12 Zulu earlier this afternoon, you can see general thinking is there, that this is going to be a very close shave to eastern Florida, and then this becomes a Cape Hatteras system as a next upper-level feature begins to take it up and move it towards the northeast. Atlantic Ridge continues to stay in place. If you go back to 0Z, this, I believe, this run had it way to the south. Yeah, there you go. Way to the south, underneath a more dominant negative Pacific North Atlantic or North American oscillation. You come back to 18Z, and now we're back to the South Florida solution, moving up towards Louisiana. So there's a lot of volatility in our models here. We can't lock anything in. We can start looking at some of the background features to get a better handle on what a system, if it were to be present there, is expected to do. But we can't sit there and say it's going to fish or it's going to hit land. And right now, given some of the background pieces that we have to watch, 96L, which likely won't do much out there over the central Atlantic, so we can infer we're going to have a stronger Atlantic high pressure, increasing the flow of our easterly winds out there. Let me show those to you as a matter of fact. Let's go to upper level winds. We'll go to 850. Oh, we'll just use 920. Oh, there it is, 850. Oh, we'll use 925. So there you go. We'll go back in time. See that wind corridor there? That is your Atlantic, Bermuda, Azores high right there. There's your track. If that pattern were to just hold, if this were a static image and we can track a tropical system through there, that thing is moving all the way as far west as it could, a la Barrow like last year, for sure. But that's not how our patterns work. There's always little perturbations and things that disrupt the flow. But see, notice here, You can draw your Atlantic high and your negative PNA from almost 1,000 miles away. Look at how there's really no winds in this area. So that's exactly why the model run wants to push it so far to the west. You've got that extension of your Atlantic high pressure in the form of your negative PNA, and there's nothing upstream of that to derail this pattern. So again, if you look, this is that zonal flow. You're far more oriented west to east than you are, geez, my Epic pen. You're oriented far more west to east than you are east to or north to south. And that's why in some of these model iterations, you see it curving away, going west, curving away, going west. If I switch over to 12Z, you're going to see a more amplified pattern. See that? See how now if I were to draw the high pressure, you're like this? Kind of like a bow tie. There's your weakness. And as the system continues to move off towards the west, it's going to find that weakness. See that? See how the winds are kind of pinching together there? You don't have that big dome of relaxed flow. Another kicker here that'll help us pinpoint where this thing is going to go are the neutral points in your wind flow. I noticed earlier when we were watching the 12Z GFS come in, and I'll go to Cyclonic Weather to show you that because I like this website the best for the GFS. There was one little identifier that helped clue me in on it being more of a Florida, if not a South Florida issue, and it was in your mid-level winds. Let's go to 700 millibars, and we'll go back to, we'll use, this is 6Z. We'll use 6Z. So let's go halfway through the run, and I want to show you what's happening over the eastern United States here. So you can tell where your weakness is by finding the neutral point in your winds, the call, the COL as it's called. And if you look at 6 Zulu, you can see this thing was going to recurve even while it was still in the Atlantic. Because if you were to streamline your winds, there's your call right there. There's your neutral point. That's not only the weakness, but that's also the differentiator between your individual air masses. There's your Atlantic high. This is your continental tropical high that's trying to reach up into there, your maritime tropical, whichever you want to call it in terms of your analysis. But there is your call right there, your neutral point between the winds where everything kind of meets and you get really good convergence, create some decent lift, but that's where these tropical features tend to get stuck. That's where they get stuck. Now watch what happens here. When I switch to 12Z, I'm going to leave it at the exact same time. So notice, we're still out over the Atlantic, not doing a whole lot. And then as soon as you move forward in time ever so slightly with the progression of our feature, your call is right there. You're much closer to the United States. Because now you have a more zonal ridge built in. God, I hate this Epic pen when it lags. You have a more zonal ridge. That's your neutral NAO out there across the Atlantic, and your PNA is building in more gradually. Shout out to Danny Morris in our tropical chat. He's been pointing that out to us for the last couple days. And that's why on this model run, if you follow where your call is, see here, now if you were to try to draw your call, there is none. You can't find it. You can make a case that there's one up here, but that's very disgusting. Your call is now out over in this area, which is why it tracks through all the way towards the west-northwest. And, obviously, I'm not forecasting it here. I'm not trying to tell you that this is where it's going to go because I literally just showed you 3 different solutions as to where it could go. But these are the little things that we're going to monitor going forward. We don't have a storm yet. We don't have an invest. I'm very curious. I'm eager, as a matter of fact. I don't think I've been this excited since Hurricane Milton to get hurricane models on a feature like this. Like, yeah, we've had some invests out there, but nothing like this with such a high ceiling. It's another thing I want to make a call to you all right? That's another thing I want to make sure that you understand is this one has a high ceiling. If it maintains its integrity through the MDR, begins to undergo genesis between 40 and 45 west, that's when, I'm very curious to see what happens once we get beyond 50, 60 west, because if it doesn't form up and get its act together out there in the MDR, it's going to blow its top once it gets into the western Atlantic. Undoubtedly, that's where all of our heat and all of our lift has been focused the entirety of this hurricane season. So yeah, I bet you 10 to 1 we'll do another little fact check so you guys can see that I at least know a thing or two about what I'm talking about. Let's go to our 18Z. Oh yeah, see? It's a tried and true model. It's a tried and true way to do your analysis and kind of pick up where your system's going to go. So on the 18Z run, for those of you who tuned into it, we had a huge recurve. This was definitely one that went way out. Definitely another option, but right now we just don't know. And right out of the gate, look, there's our feature. Hasn't even left the MDR. It's still in the Atlantic. Your call is now over here. It's very weird looking, but now look at where the call is between the features. Your neutral point in the winds is way out to the west, and I bet you 10 to 1 if I leave the image the way that it is and I fast forward, the feature's going to move right through it. Oh, look. Literally spot on. I swear, God is my witness. I just threw that in there right now and I bullseyed it. So these are the little things we have to watch for as this feature comes through. And again, for those of you who want, we have a lot of people in here tonight. Thank you, by the way, for tuning in. These are the little nuances that you pick up when you get under your belt years upon years of, meteorological experience. I have about 13 now. I've done a lot of synoptic meteorology. That was my favorite position to work during my time in Air Force weather. And watching where your neutral points and the winds are and the differences in your air masses and your wind flow patterns will tell you a lot about it. And so you can see there, I hand jammed that thing in there with some ugly Epic pen and I plastered it right where the storm went. If I go back to 6 Zulu, let's rewind the clock. I'll kind of do it almost pseudo blindfold. Let's rewind the clock so I don't cheat. We'll do another little trick. We'll do another little test. Let's go to, or actually, you know what? Sorry, my mouse lagged. Let's go to 0Z. Let's do a test on a totally unbiased run. Let's go to 700 millibars, and let's go ahead and do the bam already. I can already see it. There's your call right there. Call is right there. Let's fast forward a little bit, put it in the Central Atlantic, see if it stays there. Let me reanalyze. There is your neutral point in the winds right there. It's another raggedy looking call, but there it go. Oh my goodness, my pen. This thing is really frustrating me. There is your neutral point. If it'll let me draw it. All right, I'm going to put the neutral point right there. I'm not going to draw the little fancy symbol for it. And let's fast forward the model run. And there it goes. Only get the second feature in it. So close enough. If I were able to draw, there it is right there. If I were able to draw the actual feature in there for you instead of drawing a random circle, that would have helped a lot. I don't know why this Epic pen be lagging so much. I'm just glad the stream is holding together. So anyways, those are the different bits and pieces of the pattern that we have to watch. You can see on our Euro probabilities, we're spiking up halfway through the MDR, which is why I think our probabilities are going to go up for formation on National Hurricane Center's page. I would not be surprised if by 2 o'clock we're already at 30%. If not, we nudge it off to 40%. We'll have to wait and see, but you can see our probabilities are going up, and it's going to continue to do so. And then even the Euro probabilities do a fantastic job of showing that bifurcation in our track. These are outliers. I'm calling them outliers, and I can show you why. I really do think that where this system goes is going to be immediately west of Bermuda. Good God, this pen is not doing me any favors. Immediately west of Bermuda, or we're going through. That's it. So this is not going to be a fish storm. We're definitely going to feel effects from it one way or another. If you consider any system that doesn't hit you or stays offshore as a fish storm, then, well, you're left to your own devices. That's cool. I'm not going to shame you for that. But if you look, the GEFS ensembles, and I'll show you the Euro ensembles after this as well, I think recurve this thing a little too soon. And if you notice, we're seeing a much more relaxed, almost like a negative NAO phasing out there by the 16th of August. We have a couple of little low pressure members that help to weaken our Atlantic high pressure, and that's what allows this thing to curve towards the north a lot faster. That's more of a late September, October pattern, not an August pattern. And that's why we see those quick recurves. But if you notice, a good chunk of our ensemble members are immediately west of Bermuda. So everybody in the eastern United States wants to pay attention to this. Even if it's a dud, which is excellent news, it's still going to be able to make a run close enough to where we're going to be sweating a little bit, kind of like what I am right now. I have not looked at the 18Z AI ensembles, but I'd imagine we're going to see enormous dispersion in these as well. These ones have been very disorganized, very sloppy. Okay, there goes our Genesis. Yep, see, you can't deduce anything. There's absolutely no deduction to take here. You cannot draw a conclusion from this. I know they say ensembles are your best friend when looking long range, but I am not going to try to draw a forecast based on that. Oh, yeah, it could go all the way up and out into the North Atlantic, or it could head towards Mexico. That's my margin. No, I'm not going to do that. So there's a couple of different variables in this that you want to take into the equation. Weakening of your Atlantic high, what's coming up over the northern mid-latitudes. Jesus, my freaking pen would cooperate. The northern mid-latitudes, and then what happens over western Conus with our Rossby pattern, our long wave pattern. Those are the three kickers. We have to watch out for our little nuances in the pattern. The overarching big picture pattern is going to be there to suggest landfalls, for sure. For sure. And no, we're not looking 13 days out. Not looking 13 days out. And I didn't say that this is what my prediction is going to be. I actually just got through saying that this is not a prediction. I'm not going to try to predict it from there. The general trend is westward. During the first 5 to 7 days, it's going to move beyond 60 west, and that's where we have to keep our eyes open. And I'm going to dig my heels in. If I see anybody out there saying fish storm because it doesn't hit them or it curves at the last second, that's not a fish storm. Sorry. Not a fish storm. In the purest definition of a fish storm, you would need to not pass Bermuda. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200. If you pass that threshold, you're no longer a fish storm because somebody's going to feel it. Just like I was a little disturbed when meteorologists were saying that Dexter was a fish storm. That wasn't a fish storm. It was just moving away. We got lucky. It was so close to shore that it could have been anyone's problem if the pattern was there and it wasn't attached to a front. So you can't deduce anything from there. The only model run of our ensembles that I personally really liked were the 6Z ensembles of the GFS, because you can see we have a very tight cluster. That is a very doable solution. These ensembles make the most sense to me anyways. If I go back in time, you'll see that we have a couple of members here that try to flare up 96L. As a result of that, you get a chunk taken out of your Atlantic high pressure, and you can see a couple of our members immediately rocket to the north in response to those lowering pressures, splitting the high in half. But then, beyond that, you get the rest of your ensemble members to stay to the immediate west of Bermuda or move in towards the east coast of the United States. And again, enormous margin of error. We're talking, folks, all the way up from the heck just happened. Am I still with you all? What just happened? Are we still in the stream or did it just restart? Okay, no, we're still here. What was that? Are you all still there with me? My whole web page just crashed for some reason. That was weird. Okay, are we back? I hope we're back. Gosh, this is why I don't like live streams anymore. It's such a bummer. Okay, thank you all. I appreciate that. Jeez, this is why I prefer the video updates. All I have to worry about is uploading, and we're straight. I don't know what just happened there. So to wrap up, I told myself I would keep this to about 35, 40 minutes because I didn't want to exhaust myself tomorrow. I got another busy day, and I haven't eaten anything yet. Haven't eaten anything since like noon, because it's just been a rigmarole of an afternoon into an evening. I'm exhausted, but that's neither here nor there. We're talking tropics, and it's been a pleasure. So some of the key takeaways right now, and I'll go full screen before, everyone starts tuning out. Key takeaways, this is going to be one of our features that I do think has the highest probability of developing. Obviously, there's no guarantee, and I know a lot of us are still very much so on the fence. The bearishness is there, because of the way we've been bit in the rear end by previous features, i.e. our first two tropical waves out there. But this one has the greatest amount of support so far, and that has to pay dividends one way, shape, or form. Do I think some of the model solutions that show this thing firing up right off the west coast of Africa are a little overcooked? Absolutely. I think we've boiled a little into the well-done zone there. That's not what's going to happen. If I had to make a preliminary prediction based on current conditions and how things are going to continue to slowly but surely improve, we're probably going to see a tropical depression somewhere in through here. If our current trends continue, if at 0Z or even through the day tomorrow at 12Z, we suddenly start to lose the support like we did with our other waves, then okay, we got to backpedal big time and catch up with ourselves, and all of these models are going to take an L big time. All these models are going to take an L, and we're going to have to go back to the pre-computer age to where we're just doing hand-drawn charts and whatnot, because we have way too much on the table here for this thing to suddenly just disappear and poof. If it does, then we cannot trust these computer models. My screen should be on. I can see myself. I can still see myself. Daddy Shark is saying my screen isn't on. I can see myself. Oh, man, I'm really shiny. That's how sweaty I am. Good God. It has been 85, almost 90 degrees in this house. Ridiculous. So to tell you the truth, thank you all for the donations in the chat right now. They mean so much more because my wallet is about to rapidly intensify into the negatives with how much they're trying to charge me for all the stuff that needs to be done. Terrible. Terrible. You know, but I'm not going to stop doing these tropical updates. Anyways, second key takeaway. What we have to watch is what happens with 96L as it moves up towards the north. Second, oh yeah, I have my face up right now because we're getting ready to close out. But if you want to pull up some charts or you have some questions, let me know. But right now I just have my face up. That was intentional. The second piece, we have to watch for what happens with the 96L. We have to watch the PNA, and we have to watch what happens with our PNA pattern, whether it increases in amplitude or it remains progressive, just like the Atlantic is expected to be progressive. The Atlantic, for example, and I will pull us back over to the map, the Atlantic is expected to remain in fairly neutral flow. So our prevailing westerly winds and our easterly trade winds are going to generally flow west to east and east to west. That much we can count on. It's from about 60 west to the east coast of the United States that becomes a little wishy-washy. If 96L takes a bite out of our Atlantic high pressure, it'll distort the flow. We'll have a weakness earlier on. If it manages to fuse with some of our jet stream energy up over the mid-latitudes, it'll also help to create a little bit of lowering pressure on the northwest quadrant of our Atlantic high, and as a result, paves the corridor for a quicker escape. If we see the neutral flow maintain itself over the Atlantic and we see our negative PNA build back in and remain semi-amplified, we don't want it to go rocking all the way into a blocking pattern because then you'll naturally get weakness off the East Coast. And that's some of what our model runs are showing us. Again, if I go back to the 12Z run of, we'll use the GFS. Actually, you know what? We'll use the European model. We'll use the 0Z Euro because I know that one fished it out very early. And we're lagging now. There we go. If I show you your upper heights at 0Z when this thing first fished out, notice here we have a very amplified ridge. You see that massive amplified ridge? But naturally you get more of a weakness in your subtropical ridging over the Atlantic because of that. Although I also don't really agree with this pattern either. Where does that upper low come from over the southeast United States? Whereas at 12Z today, we managed to make a little bit more of a run towards the United States because see how our pattern is a little more flattened out? We are not as amped up. We have broad ridging into very broad troughing out over the Atlantic. That is more landfall favoring because it allows features to move towards the west a little bit faster. If we had more north-south movement like a heart monitor at the hospital going up and down and so on and so forth, that's when you have easier options to escape and move like this. That's what we had in 2023. 2023, we had a very negative NAO, so we had a blocking pattern out over the Atlantic, and as a result, we had a trough here, very dominant subtropical ridge over all that heat over the Atlantic, and every single storm minus Idalia, but even Idalia felt the effects of that because it lifted right up and out like this. Lee curved out, Margot curved out, Philippe curved out, every single storm, Tammy curved out, all the named storms minus Harold. That was the only one that made it west as a sloppy tropical storm. So we have our assignment. We just need to complete the assignment and watch it over the next 7 to 10 days. We need to watch what happens with the wave over the next 2 to 4 days. That's going to tell us a lot as to whether or not it will develop in the MDR or closer to 50, 60 west. So we've got a number of different moving pieces here that I'm going to be dialing in, but I took a lot of time alongside some of my friends in the background to really dial in what it is that we need to watch for, and I think we understand the assignment. So we'll just continue to watch and see what happens. And yes, I've seen the latest GFS run. To tell you the truth, it's difficult right now because, there are some reasons to lean on the ensembles a little bit more, but I also don't like the dispersion that we're seeing in our ensembles. The deterministic runs, I'm leaning on them more so for our background environment, not where the storm goes. I'm not really looking at the storm because remember, we don't have a storm yet, so there's no reason to look at our computer models and watch what it does with the storm. What you need to be watching for are the trends in the background, the local environment and the big picture environment. You need to be watching for your long wave features that take up the United States, North America, the greater Atlantic, all the way down to just random little perturbations, short waves, weak troughs, minor short waves. The low pressures over the Atlantic that could spin off of 96L or off the Quebec, Atlantic Canada coast because of our ridge building in. Those are little weaknesses that we have to watch, and we're not going to get a good handle on those until we have a major system out there. And when I say major, I mean, like a developing tropical system moving west. I'm not saying a major hurricane, but just a legitimate feature out there, and then we can finally mess around with some of the features that are around it. Just want to show one more thing for shoots and giggles because I've been watching these. The National Hurricane Center Big Brains have rolled out multi-storm hurricane models. I don't have access to them just yet. I need to look up the link, but I've been looking at what our Synoptic, HWRF, and HMON have been doing with that thing. Yeah, see, so the HWRF, very consistent, shows this thing booking it off towards the west. Obviously, these are your hurricane models, and they're not fixated on the storm, so don't, buy into these as gospel. But if you notice, it takes 96L out of the equation, and as this ridge builds in, all this stuff that would ordinarily weaken it is going to go over the apex of it. So it's going to allow the backside flow to really kick this thing west. And if you notice, the HWRF moves it westward generally. We're probably going to see it start to lift up as it approaches the Lesser Antilles and maybe squeak just to the north of there, somewhere in here. But generally moving west, if not west-northwest, over the next 5 days. Let's see what our HMON shows, and then we will call it a night. There you go. HMON on the exact same, actually, yeah, spot on with what the, what the HWRF has for us. So here we go. There we go. That is all she wrote. Thank you all so much for the wonderful donations. Not even joking. They hit differently because of the fact that it's been a very brutal last 2 weeks. Came back from Virginia, came back from a work conference, and I feel like life has just been boom, 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 and I can only do so much head movement to move around all that. So, but we're working and we're grinding, and we've got a lot to track out there. We're still just busy. We're not active just yet. Hello there. Yeah, no, it's not going to Texas. It's not. I really wish we would stop just reading model runs. That's not forecasting. And yes, I know exactly who you're talking about. It's not going to Texas. That is the least of my concern. Louisiana and Texas and Mexico are of the least of my concerns. We would need this thing to hypothetically stay dead up until the Florida Straits and then pick up some steam to ride the base of our subtropical high and then move westward. That's not what's going to happen. Sorry, I'm talking to the chat over here. Let me move the chat this way so I can talk to you all. There we go. Now I'm kind of looking at the camera again. I should probably flip my YouTube and my OBS screen so I'm not putting my hand in the camera like this. But yeah, no, that's probably the least possible outcome. That's for sure. Not Texas. This is not a Texas issue. Central Florida should be paying attention for sure. Everybody from Central or from Florida all the way up the East Coast need to be paying attention. Not even joking. That sounds like a very, this dude has no idea what he's talking about. Well, that's just where we are right now. It's going to be moving generally towards the west, and it'll either recurve just beforehand or someone is going to receive it. So just, be careful. Just keep your eyes open. Trust a trusted weather source. Make sure that you latch on to somebody you have high confidence in. They're not going to just read you model runs like this is another episode of Days of Our Lives or their favorite soap opera. That's not what we do here. That's why I walked you through the trends we're going to be watching. This is not about the storm. Not talking about, oh, well, the Euro took it this way and the GFS took it that way. We don't know. No, it's about what's happening in the background that made the models do the things that they did with that figurative storm that they decided to put there. That's the big thing. PR needs to be watching as well. Whoops. PR definitely needs to be watching as well. Greater Antilles, not so much the Leeward and Windward Islands. I would definitely recommend the northern periphery of the Leeward Islands, getting closer to the US BVI, but not really worried too much about our Lesser Antilles unless this thing really stays weak and rides that easterly flow all the way through into the Caribbean. That's what the Canadian model had yesterday. Overnight yesterday, it had it scraping into the upper Caribbean to the south of our Greater Antilles. And yes, Braden, you've asked the same question over and over again. I told you I've seen the GFS and I've seen the Euro. I've been losing sleep. Yeah, I think all of us in my tropical chat that I'm a part of have been losing sleep, staying up late, watching the models, digging into all the different features and different phenomena, and that's what we're doing. We're tracking the local pattern. We're not tracking a storm. There's no storm yet, so we can't track it. No way to track it. We can just watch the trends because if it does form, that's where it's going to go. So we're kind of more or less trying to drill down a forecast before anything's even out there because then we'll have a better game plan if and when it does hit the board. Right now, we're looking good. This is probably our greatest shot at developing our next named storm and possibly our first hurricane of the hurricane season. Skunk works for you, exactly. No fear-mongering here, just facts. Just facts. Alex Baller, of course I remember you. I recognize the username and the profile picture all the time. I recognize everybody in here. And no, you do. Barcotics, you do. You have to check every model run. You do. Not even joking. That's forecasting. Because what you do is you build layers upon layers of continuity is what it's called. You can compare run to run, model to model. You can compare multiple runs. And the more runs you have under your belt, you can watch the trends. Because arguably, nothing is a trend until you get through a full cycle. If you can watch something change between 0, 6, 12, and 18, and then into the following day, that's your trend. You have little ticks and your little wipes and all that, and your little subtle adjustments. It's not like we're trending towards this is going to be the pattern versus, like right now our models, they're wiping, they're ticking. There's no trend. They're just ticking back and forth like a Geiger counter. There's no trend just yet. Trend would be, okay, we're locked into this steering pattern. No, right now we're just going back and forth. So we'll have to see. To get ready to hold on to your butts. We're still at DEFCON 5 right now, though. We haven't gone to DEFCON 4 yet. Actually, you know what? We'll go to DEFCON 4 on the hold on to your butts-o-meter. We're definitely at DEFCON 4 because we have the area of influence or interest. We have the AOI National Hurricane Center. So that's a step in the right direction. They're picking up what the models are putting down. And I personally can't wait to have this as an invest. I really hope we at least get an invest because I want to see what hurricane models do with it. Last year, everybody was laughing their butts off when the halves A and B in the H-Wharf cranked up Milton in the first couple runs to a Cat 5. So I'm very curious to see what our hurricane models do in this case. Geez, you'd think that I'm like a porcelain doll with as shiny as I am tonight. Not a 0% chance, Matt, but it is definitely one of my lower solutions. Definitely not concerned about Louisiana or Texas. Definitely not concerned about Louisiana or Texas. Not even really Mississippi. Right now, I'm more focused on our Caribbean folks, the Turks and Caicos, the Bahamas, and then the eastern United States. Those are my areas that I think we need to watch for in that same order. Lesser Antilles, Greater Antilles, Turks and Caicos Islands, the rest of the Bahamas, and then the United States. That's my area that we need to watch. If there was ever a chance for North Carolina to get a hurricane, this year is definitely much higher. I've said the same thing about eastern Florida. If we were going to see a hurricane break the drought in East Florida, this year has a higher run-in of doing so. And then the crazy thing is, if this does pop off and things get ramping up through the midsections of August, because it's still only the 8th, we have to wait and see what happens. if things start to ramp up as we move through the month of August, we still have September and October and maybe the first week or two of November, which I do full-heartedly believe will be active. If we continue to see certain, areas of the Atlantic warm up and we trend back into a La Nina, which it does seem like we have a good running to do so. We've got a lot of heat built up near the maritime continent, so we're going to have a lot of lift out there, really helping to increase the amount of westerly winds we have across the tropical Pacific. So I really do think that the 4 and the 3.4 Enso regions can cool down a little bit more. I'm pretty sure they have been doing that. I will update you all on, actually, you know what? Before we close out, I'm so sorry. I know I keep dragging this on. Just realized we've got our new batch of NMME data in, because today's the 8th. So I want to see what it's thinking in terms of La Nina, La Nada, or El Nino. Yep, there we go. There's August. Oh, look at that. As a matter of fact, NMME trended up in terms of our precip values out there in August. Same with September, looking kind of healthy in October, and then November still a leftover precip signal out there. So that's definitely different than previous model runs. Look at the last run for August, showing Florida, but then the rest of the Atlantic was a dead stick. Same thing with June. June was very scary. Look at the drought out there for August. Nothing. So we're definitely backfilling the pattern. Once again, climate models kind of struggled a little bit. It's showing a bit of a healthier African monsoon, a little bit better of an MDR, and then there's your track tendency right in through there. But anyways, we'll round out this live discussion with a look at the Enso. SST anomaly, there's August, September, there it is. So yeah, NMME is dumbling down on us going back to a La Nina. Negative IOD is going to stick for the peak of the hurricane season. Looks like we'll be forecasted to trend towards a La Nina by the time we get into late September through October and November, with a warm Atlantic Ocean up here. So yeah. And then all of our models are starting to trend towards warming in the Enso regions for next year, but obviously we're not going to talk about next year. We're barely rocking into the more active phases of 2025. I'm not going to start dabbling in 2026. So we'll have to watch that, because we got to remember, even if it starts getting a little busy out there, we still have rest of August, September, October, and November to get through. And if there's anything last year taught us, is it ain't over until it's Jover. So Peter Moss, thank you very much for the $10 donation. You guys are fantastic, to tell you the truth. You guys are amazing. And like I said, these donations hit differently because they're all going to go to hopefully getting the AC turned back on in this house. Somebody mentioned Weather Center Willow, and it's been sad. You can tell she's very low energy because of how hot it is in here. She's very low energy. She's always sprawled out on the tile floor because that's where it's coolest during the day. At night, at least with these thunderstorms, we can pop open the windows and get a little bit of airflow in here. But right now I have just this little dinky fan blowing on me. I wanted to get a small one in here so I at least get a little bit of airflow, but it's not buzzing into the microphone. So yeah, that's all she wrote. And it would be kind of, now that Peter, you mentioned it, it would be kind of symbolic if Erin came back and hit Florida again, because I'm pretty sure we've had a Hurricane Erin out there that's hit Florida in the past. I know I've tracked an Erin before, but I don't think it actually hit Florida, or maybe it did as a tropical storm. Let's see. I know now we're getting kind of getting into a little bit of the sillies. Not 1994, David. There we go. Hurricane Erin. Oh, yeah, there we go. Look at that. That's actually pretty interesting. It was an East Coast Florida storm, too. Wow. Hurricane Erin in 95. So that's interesting. Not thinking it's I mean, it could be. It's kind of following the same path. If this was an August storm, that'd make it even more interesting. Maybe this is a little analog. Oh, no, never mind. This was a late July system, it looks like. Then it emerged into the Gulf on... Oh, wow. Whoops. I just realized. You guys are not seeing what I'm seeing, but there's prior Hurricane Erin, ironically, in 95. Came ashore... Same general pattern. I mean, this was technically a late July into August storm, so you can kind of make a case. You can kind of make a case for it, I guess, but that's neither here nor there. All right, I've done the full hour. Once again, like I always say I'm not going to do, but we did it. Thank you all very much for watching. Please, if you haven't done so already and you're new to the channel, please kindly consider clicking that subscribe button. I'm going to be here with you through the rest of the hurricane season, especially through the peak. You can find me here. You can find me with News 6. We're going to be putting out so much content over the next couple months. I definitely do think this is the time to subscribe if you haven't done so already. It would mean the world to me and even the rest of my team back at News 6 if you were to tune in for some of our tropical weather content. I personally am going to have plenty of YouTube stuff, social media content, you name it. You'll find me everywhere talking tropics, regardless of the time of the day, time of the week. We're going to be discussing things, and you can count on me. I'm working round the clock, low-key losing sleep, but it's self-inflicted because I want to just dial this stuff in for everybody. This is like my bread and butter. This is it. You challenge yourself as a forecaster, and I have so much fun doing so. And I'm going to stick in the trenches with every single one of you as we walk through the hurricane season. So give that like button a little nudge. Let's get this information out there. Sorry for a couple of the technical difficulties. Sorry for my shiny face. And yeah, so... Oh yeah, April, once things really get going, especially if this system does, Jonathan and I will be streaming and doing videos together for sure. For sure. But all right, everybody, you have been a spectacular audience. Ethan, I'm not going to miss the $2 donation, buddy. I do sincerely appreciate it. New England could face. I don't want to put single landfall sites out there into open air just yet because we're still way too far out. We got to get a system first, and then we can really dial stuff in. But thank you all very much for watching. I do sincerely appreciate it. I'm going to go get some food and go take a shower. You'd think I'm sweating over here because I'm stressing out. It's like, nah, fam, it's just hot. It's probably 90 degrees in this house once again because I've been talking for an hour. You guys have a beautiful night. I hope you've had a spectacular week, and I hope that your weekend treats you well. We will talk again very soon. Rest assured, if anything pops up through the weekend, I will find a way to get on here, talk some tropics, whether it be with a video or another live stream. Saturday and Sunday, more than likely videos as opposed to live streams. We'll wait until the beginning of next week to pop out another live stream. But regardless, if there's any trends or updates that you all need to know, I will upload it and get it to you here on the Weather Center. So you guys enjoy the rest of your Friday evening. We will talk to you again soon. But until then, this is Weather Center Nazario signing out.